We commence tonight's famous jury trial, The People versus Robert Hunt. And now we take you to the courtroom where Robert Hunt, a shrewd-looking man of perhaps 38, idly fingered the diamond pin in his bright blue necktie. And listen calmly as the district attorney outlined the case and called his first witness.
Henry Park, you are an employee in the local office of the State Motor Vehicle Department?
Yes, I handle the transfers of title when a car is sold in this city. That is, the transfer of title from seller to buyer has to be registered with the state.
No, during the month of last June, do you remember any business the defendant transacted with a man named Lawrence Poole?
Yes. Hunt bought a car from Poole.
Have you any personal knowledge of this transaction?
Why, yes, it was handled right at my desk.
At your desk?
Yes. Poole asked me to see if the transfer was okay legally.
Did the defendant pay Poole the money in your presence?
Yes, in hard cash, too. No checks on that deal.
I see. And then what happened?
Well, Poole put this money in his wallet, and Hunt offered him a ride back to Poole's real estate office. Poole accepted, and they went out. That was about 4:40 in the afternoon.
Mr. Fox, I have a silver fountain pen here. You ever see this pen before?
Why, yes, it looks like one Hunt had. Sure, it must be his. It has his initials on it. R.H.
I offer it in evidence.
No objection.
May be received and locked.
Mr. Fox, when did you last see this pen?
When the police showed it to me and told me they'd found it beside the body of Lawrence Poole.
You can cross-examine the witness.
Mr. Fox, do you remember whether Robert Hunt used this fountain pen in your office that day he bought Lawrence Poole's car? Yes, I'm sure he did. He always used it to fill out the forms. Now, try and remember exactly what happened. When Hunt finished using the pen, did he hand it to Poole to sign his name with? Think very carefully.
Well, yes, I think he did.
In fact, I know he did.
Did you see Poole return the pen to Hunt?
I don't remember.
Thank you, that's all.
Call Eleanor Reddick.
Eleanor Reddick, Lawrence Poole's secretary, testified that Poole had not returned to his office the afternoon of June 10th. Further witnesses were called to show that from the time Lawrence Poole drove off with Robert Hunt on the afternoon of June 10th with $500 in his pocket, he was never again seen alive. And then the next witness for the prosecution was called Elmer Boyd.
Elmer Boyd, take this stand. Elmer Boyd, do you swear the evidence you give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I guess so. That isn't a proper response. Say I do.
Oh, but how do I know what they'll ask me, Judge?
You can refuse to answer incriminating questions. Take the oath.
Well, okay, I do.
Boyd, where were you on the morning of last June 11th?
I was touring the car on the Silk Farm Road.
Tell the jury what happened.
Well, I'm walking along and I see something in the ditch by the road. I look and it's a man that's fallen over. He's lying there in the ditch. Dead.
Do you know who that man was?
I don't know. Fellow by the name of Lawrence Poole.
Now, did you pick up anything near his body? Any object?
Yeah? A fountain pen, silver too. But the cops took it off of me when they...
Never mind that. Is this fountain pen, which has been identified as belonging to the defendant, the pen you found?
Yeah, that's the one.
Now, Boyd, did you examine Lawrence Poole's wallet to see if there was any money in it?
Ain't that a criminating question, Your Honor?
No, not under the circumstances. Answer the question.
Well, yeah, I did kind of take a look.
Was there any large sum of money in that wallet?
No, there wasn't nothing in it.
Boyd, I want the truth. Nothing's going to happen to you if you tell the truth, but plenty will if you don't. Was there any money in that wallet?
I object. The district attorney is threatening the witness and practically dictating the answer he wants.
Your Honor, this is a hostile and reluctant witness. He cannot be questioned in the usual way.
I think that is obvious. Answer the question, Boyd, and tell the exact truth, whatever it is. Never mind what you think this gentleman wants you to say. Just tell the truth.
Well?
Well, yeah.
There was 14 bucks in the wallet.
And that was all?
Yeah, so help me. Just 14 bucks. That's every cent there was.
No sign of anything like $500 in cash.
Say, if there'd been 500 bucks in that wallet, I would have been out of this country so fast with that dough, the cops would still be looking for me.
I see. Take the witness. What's your occupation, Boyd?
Oh, go on. You know I ain't got no occupation.
Tramp?
Sure, bindle, stiff, whatever you want to call it.
Ever been to jail?
Sure.
Ever convicted of stealing?
Your Honor, I object to this line of questioning. This man has told his story. His past record is irrelevant.
His past record is vital on the subject of credibility, Your Honor.
Yes, I agree. Objection overruled.
Well, have you ever been convicted of stealing, Boyd?
Yeah. Couple of times.
Boyd, you took more than $14 out of Poole's wallet, didn't you?
I'm telling you, that's all there was. I never seen no 500 bucks. 14 lousy bucks is all I got, and I wish I'd never touched it.
Didn't you take that $500 and hide it where you could find it again?
After you gone into town and gotten drunk to celebrate the plan? Yeah, I wouldn't have been such a fool.
And you wouldn't be such a fool as to admit it now, would you? That's all. Call Dr. Arthur Kennedy.
Dr. Kennedy testified that Poole had been killed by a heavy blow with some blunt instrument that fractured his skull, and in addition, he'd been run over after death, making the murder look like a hit-and-run accident. Then the district attorney picked up a heavy wrench from his desk and showed it to the doctor.
Doctor, could an instrument such as this wrench here have caused the skull fracture you examined?
Yes, if that could have done it.
Thank you, Doctor. Your witness. Doctor, isn't it possible that the skull fracture you spoke of was caused at the same time that Poole was run over?
I think the fracture was caused first.
But it is possible that all the injuries were simultaneous.
Well, yes, it's possible.
That's all. Call Police Officer George Williams.
George Williams! George Williams! George Williams!
Officer, will you tell the jury what happened on the morning of last June 11th?
Well, we had a report to keep a lookout for a man named Lawrence Poole who had been missing since late the previous afternoon.
Yes, about 10:30 on the morning of the 11th.
We pulled in a tramp for drunkenness and disorderly conduct. He had about $10 on him, and we figured he'd probably stolen it. So we questioned him, and he finally admitted he took it off a body he'd found out on the Silk Farm Road. So we investigated and found the body of Lawrence Poole.
I see. You also found this silver pan in the possession of this tramp?
Yes.
What did you do then?
We traced the pan to Robert Hunt. We tried to find him, but he'd pulled up stakes during the night and left town. He was finally located 3 days later, clear over on the other side of the state.
And did you question him?
Yes. He said he drove Poole to a corner near his office and let him out there and never saw him again. And after he let Poole out, Hunt said he drove straight to the lot where he kept his second-hand cars.
And what time did he say he arrived there?
About 5 o'clock or a little after.
And if Hunt had driven onto the Silk Farm Road with Poole, could he have got back to his lot by 5 o'clock?
Oh, no. Driving at a normal rate of speed, he couldn't have got back there much before 6.
I see. No, officer, I show you this wrench here. Have you ever seen it before?
Yes. I took it from the toolkit of Hunt's car. The one he bought from Poole.
Did you examine this wrench for bloodstains and fingerprints?
Yes.
And what did you find?
The handle of the wrench had a lot of prints on it, including Hunt's. But the head of the wrench had been washed and wiped clean.
How did that correspond with the other tools in the car?
None of them had been cleaned.
That is all. Take the witness. Tell me, officer, were any traces of blood found on this wrench?
No, it had been cleaned.
I see. But isn't it true that if an object has had blood on it, microscopic traces of that blood are almost always found, even if the object has been cleaned?
Well, yes.
That is all. Call Edward Harvey. Edward Harvey. Edward Harvey. Edward Harvey. Mr. Harvey, where were you at 5 o'clock on the afternoon of June 10th?
I was at Robert Hunt's lot where he sold his used cars.
What were you doing there?
Where you see Hunt?
Hunt was not there, as he claimed.
No.
How long did you wait there?
Till he came.
And what time was that?
After 6.
Hunt did not show up until
After 6.
That's right.
cross-examined.
Mr. Harvey, If your story is true, it destroys the defendant's alibi, doesn't it?
I reckon it does.
But your story isn't true, is it?
Yes, it's true.
You're lying, aren't you? Deliberately trying to get even with Robert Hunt, aren't you? To pay him back for a fancied wrong you believe he did you. Isn't that so?
No, I'm not lying.
Isn't it a fact that you attacked Hunt that afternoon? Didn't you try to kill him?
Well, I went for it.
That's all, Mr. Harvey.
One moment, please, Mr. Harvey. Will you tell the jury why you were waiting to see Robert Hunt that afternoon?
Objected to?
I had a kid. About 16 he was. He got himself a job this spring working after school. He saved his money and wanted to buy a car. He finally bought one from Robert Hunt. Paid $45 for all the money he had.
Mr. Witness, when you hear an objection, stop. Don't talk. Wait till I rule on it.
That objection is sustained. Strike the answer. The jury will disregard it. It wasn't much of a car, but my kid was as positive as a rose. Got his friends together that night after he bought it and took him home for a ride. There's a steep hill just outside of town with a bad trail at the bottom. They came to that hill and started down. Halfway down, the brake burned out. The brake lining was just like paper. Good for a couple of stops and then just burned out like paper.
I said stop. Do you hear me?
I crossed the car and never made the trail. It smashed up. All the kids were taken to the hospital, except my son. They took him to the morgue. That's what I wanted to see Robert Hunt about that afternoon. I wanted to kill him. He murdered my son. Kill him! Kill him!
Take that man out of here. Strike out everything. Strike it out.
Breaking under the strain of telling his agonizing story, the father subbed out the details of how he had tried to kill Robert Hunt on the afternoon of June 10th and had been overpowered by the young man. When the father's testimony was completed, the district attorney dramatically rested his case. We will continue with this famous trial in just a moment. Now we take you back to the courtroom where the trial of Robert Hunt, charged with the murder of Lawrence Poole, continued as the defense attorney concluded his opening to the jury.
And, ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution has merely inferred that Hunt might have committed this crime. But we will prove that he could not have committed it. I call my first witness, Bill Miller. Bill Miller? Bill Miller? Bill Miller, take the stand. Bill Miller, do you swear the evidence you'll give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Miss Miller, will you tell the jury where you were between the hours of 5 and 6 on June 10th last?
Sure. I was out riding with Bobby Hunt in the car he just bought from Mr. Poole.
Huh? You were with him all the time between the hours of 5 and 6 o'clock?
Sure. He picked me up a few minutes to 5, and we drove around some, and he got me back around 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Miss Miller. Cross-examine.
Miss Miller, where did you drive to that afternoon?
Oh, just out the main driveway.
See anyone you knew or stop anywhere?
No, we just drove.
I thought so. Miller, isn't that a new coat you're wearing?
Uh-huh.
Expensive, wasn't it?
Oh, you said it genuine soft trimmings. They want $200 for this little number.
Miss Miller, how much money do you make a week?
Well, it varies.
Who paid for that fur coat you're wearing?
Objected to as immaterial and irrelevant.
Sustained. Strike the question. That is all.
I call the defendant, Robert Hunt, to the stand.
Robert Hunt. Robert Hunt. Robert Hunt.
Mr. Hunt, will you tell the jury just what happened on the afternoon of June 10th last, when you left the motor vehicle department with Lawrence Poole?
Well, I offered Poole a ride. He accepted. I drove him to a corner near his office and let him out there.
And did you ever see him alive again?
No.
You'd paid quite a lot for his car, hadn't you?
Well, I bought it for my own use. I needed a fairly good car.
And when you bought this car, did you lend Poole your silver pen?
Yes, I didn't miss it until the next day. Well, then I figured Poole must have it.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to look him up about it when I got back to town, only, the cops arrested me and told me Poole had been murdered.
Mr. Hunt, you had left town when you were picked up?
Yes, but I wasn't running away from anything. I was off on a business trip looking for cars to buy.
Yes, I see. Now, Mr. Hunt, Just exactly what did you do when you left Poole on the afternoon he was killed?
I picked up Miss Miller, like she said, and we drove around for an hour or so. I got back to my lot about 6.
You told the police you got back at 5, didn't you?
Yes, you see. Well, the fact is, I am married, and I just didn't want my wife to know about me and Belle Miller.
I quite understand. Now, when did you clean the wrench in your car?
Oh, I don't remember exactly. Probably a couple of days after I left here. I was looking over the tools, and I saw this wrench was pretty rusty. So I cleaned her up and oiled her.
Thank you. Thank you, witness.
Hon, you had quite a busy day on June 10th, didn't you? But you left out the important thing you did that day, didn't you? You left out how you slugged Lawrence Poole with a wrench, drove his body out to the Silk Farm Road, and then, after stealing the $500 you'd paid him for his car, you ran the car over his lifeless body to make the death appear a hit-run accident, didn't you?
No, none of that's true.
And then, when you leaned over to pull that mangled body into the ditch beside the road, you didn't notice it when your fountain pen fell out of your pocket, did you?
I wasn't there. Poole must have had the pen. I wasn't there.
Uh-huh. And you drove back to the lot where you conducted your so-called business, arriving an hour late. That very night you fled from the scene of your crime, left town, and tried to escape. Isn't that true?
No, none of it's true. Except that I left town. And that was to buy some more cars.
No, Hunt. You say this wrench here was rusty, so you cleaned it and oiled it.
That's right.
No, it isn't right, Hunt. This wrench was cleaned, all right, scrubbed with steel wool, apparently, but it was never oiled. Look at this wrench. Do you still say you oiled it?
Oh, I remember now. My wife called me in for lunch just as I was finished cleaning the wrench, and I just tossed it in with the other tools, meaning to oil it later on. I guess I forgot.
Uh-huh. You're a good mechanic, aren't you?
Pretty good.
You take good care of your tools?
Sure.
Then, Hunt, will you explain to the jury why you carefully scrubbed the head of this wrench, where the rust wouldn't matter at all, and didn't touch the screwing mechanism, which is the only part of the wrench that needed attention?
I was interrupted, like I told you.
Oh, no. The only part of this wrench that you cleaned was the heavy head, the blood-stained part that crushed Lawrence Poole's skull.
No, I never hit him. I wasn't there.
No more questions. The defense rests, Your Honor. The state rests.
The defense attorney will sum up to the jury. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, even if the district attorney had proved everything he's tried to prove in this trial, he still would have no case against the defendant. But the defense has actually brought in a mass of evidence to knock over the few inconclusive facts that have been introduced by the prosecution. The district attorney has not even proved that murder was committed. Poole might have been the victim of a hit-run accident, but all these speculations are irrelevant as far as the guilt of the defendant is concerned. He cannot be guilty because he has an alibi. He was out riding with Belle Miller at the time the murder was committed. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, from the beginning of this trial, there has been an unconscionable attempt to prejudice you against the defendant and to make you forget the appalling and ridiculous weakness of the state's case. It is your duty to reassure the people of this community that people cannot be convicted on the basis of scandal, gossip, and a few trumpery, insignificant scraps of circumstantial evidence. It is your duty to bring in a verdict of not guilty.
The prosecution will sum up.
May it please Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen. There has been a good deal of discourteous and, to my mind, contemptible slinging of mud in my direction by my eloquent colleague. But it is simply untrue that I've tried to prejudice you against the defendant. The plain facts, speaking for themselves, have prejudiced you as they would have anyone. And now let's take a look at the trumpery, insignificant scraps of circumstantial evidence, as my colleague terms them, that have been produced. First, I ask you to remember that Lawrence Poole announced his intention of returning to his office, stepped into the defendant's car, and was never seen alive again. Within an hour, he was killed. The time lapse is so short that it would have been almost impossible for Poole to have got to the place where his body was found unless he was driven there immediately by the defendant. Remember, the defendant's pen was found on the scene of the crime. And then we find that the defendant first tried to lie to establish an alibi
and then produced a second alibi which depended on the word of a girl who obviously would not hesitate to sell her word of honor. Finally, we find the defendant skipping town in the middle of the night, and when finally found, he has in his possession this wrench, a weapon exactly fitting the specifications of the weapon that killed Poole, and the wrench has been scrubbed and cleaned on the one exact part of it that would have become blood-stained in killing Lawrence Poole. Ladies and gentlemen, all these facts cannot be coincidence. The sheer weight of them points overwhelmingly to the guilt of the defendant. Ladies and gentlemen, you know your duty in this case. Your verdict must be guilty of murder in the first degree.
The judge will now charge the jury. All those desiring to do so may leave the courtroom.
How would you have judged Robert Hunt? Guilty or not guilty? Would you have believed his alibi for the hour of the crime and his explanation of the other factors in the case? Or would you have believed that the evidence brought forward by the district attorney, even though purely circumstantial, was sufficiently strong to justify a verdict of guilty? We will bring you the actual verdict of the jury in just a moment. It was 5 hours later when the jury finally reached their decision and filed back into the courtroom with their verdict.
Mr. Foreman, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor.
How do you find?
We find the defendant, Robert Hunt, guilty.
Robert Hunt, still stubbornly protesting his innocence, was sentenced to prison for 20 years. When the girl, Belle Miller, was tried for perjury, she confessed that she'd been paid to give an alibi for Hunt. She was sentenced to serve a long prison term, and Hunt, confronted with her confession, broke down and admitted that he had murdered Lawrence Poole to rob him of the $500 paid for the car. And so ended a tragedy which began with an innocent advertisement appearing in the columns of a newspaper. Famous jury trials, the drama of the courts drawn from actual courtroom cases. This is a Grace Gibson radio production directed by Lawrence H. Cecil.